Howdy, y'all. It's Cody from the Keepers of Nerdom. I thought today would be a great day to talk about something very frustrating and fascinating to me. Is sometimes when we go to build miniatures, especially with, for example, Warhammer 40K, sometimes we have a great build and sometimes we have terrible builds. So, example, we just use those. These are actually some of the easiest builds you'll ever do. It's the Locust Destroyer for the Necrons. Real simple. Just gotta cut away and do some things. Do. Keep forgetting that it's in reverse there for the camera. It's funny. But really simple. Nothing too elaborate there. And then you get into some more complicated things. For example, Canoptic Reanimator. Reason I say these are complicated, it's not necessarily that they themselves are a hard build. What's problematic about them is the fact that they have lots of spots on the model that are very, very thin, very thin in between the legs. And actually, these legs right here, there we go. You can see just those spots where it meets in the middle, has like an energy spot that you put some sort of energy or a joint essentially there, and not like a joint that moves, but just like a joint in the piece. Very much more fragile. They're thinner. So had a very big frustration with one of these Canoptic Reanimators because it was not building correctly. I'm still gluing and working on it. It's not going to look great when it's done as far as the stuff underneath, and it's going to affect the painting. But there is one model that I went, yep, that's the number one worst model I've ever built in my life, and it is a nightmare. You know, Silent King was not easy because I had some problems with it not matching up. And I remember that not being a fun one, but this thing was on a whole nother level, and I want to show you why. This is Illuminor Xeris. Beautiful model when finished. Excuse me. However, it's getting to that point because this model takes so much time, energy, and effort. And what I've got up here is actually from buildinstructions.com. Fantastic website. So if you need something for some of your Warhammer stuff, you don't have the instructions, or you get somehow an off-brand something, you might need some instructions. But this is a perfect way to illustrate the issue. So here's Illuminor Xeris. As you can tell, a beautiful model. This is fantastically detailed and elaborate and amazing, and that's the problem. The elaborateness and the detail on it is it's just ridiculous. So as you can see, the guy right here, beautiful. It's got some sort of energy collection thing as he's summoning it over to here. So let's go and look at the instructions. It's just giving us, hey, do it in this certain way. Well, there's a problem with that. Let's go through and illustrate a few of these problems. So step one, it's not actually step one. Step one's over here on the far right of what I'm looking at on my screen. And yeah, you should be looking at it on your right. So you're essentially putting in the middle these two pieces, and it looks like this final thing on the right. Well, that's not very clear. That took me a really long time to understand exactly how those fit in there, because the picture does not give you a good example of what that is. The legs, super easy. This piece right here, the little banner thing that a lot of the Necrons have over their waists, it's whatever. But those aren't the problem. It's really these kind of steps where it's really hard to tell where exactly something goes, because it looks like you just put it right there. Not quite. It's actually a little bit more elaborate than you'd think, and it was a time-consuming piece. And so you get down into here, again, legs, nothing too bad. Those were pretty easy to build. These, trying to fit them on, because you can't see to number 10 and 11, you can't see underneath them to put them in accurately. You just have to kind of move them around slightly. And we get to number 12 here. This is actually where everything fell apart for me for quite a while, because as I was pushing down to get the super glue to stick, the back of the spine broke off because it's only connected on the bottom by a pipe, and I had to fix that whole section. It's a thing. It's fixed. It's done. You probably, once it's painted, won't even know that it was broken. Right? That's the good news. That being said, I've also realizing painting this is going to be a pain in the hind quarters because I assemble it all first just to get it up on the table. It's a beautiful again model, but it's kind of ridiculous. So, um, yeah, that spine piece right there, number 12, is an absolute mess, an absolute mess. And the other problem is, unless you put it together just right, except wait, there's nothing to put together. This should all fit completely, unless that the ball section at the bottom of the spine is not supposed to actually rest fully in this back piece. I'll show you. You can see it right there on number 1 in the middle. You can see it's supposed to fit down into that little ball joint right there in the middle of that. Well, it's apparently not supposed to rest fully in that, and you can't quite tell that that's not the case, even though, obviously it's not lit up yellow, but it kind of looks like it's supposed to because it fits perfectly down in there. Pushing onto all these sections, it just doesn't fit right. It just doesn't, and this ball will actually end up being a little bit protruding out from the thing that it just sits in like a socket. It's strange. Now, we get to another piece that's really confusing, okay? Nah, this is irritating. So step number 4 here, the chest pieces. Okay, they show it from the front, and you can tell if you're looking really closely that on the back it's actually, oh yeah, that's supposed to be glued on the back. Couldn't see that, couldn't understand that, and so I had actually pushed this guy back to like fully together to squish him down into the backside of this build because of the problems of, like, it just doesn't, these instructions are really bad. They're just not good. And so you're like, okay, that's problematic and frustrating. And then you get to the next step, like, oh, it's just the head putting on there. Well, the back piece behind here didn't line up very well. And so the head didn't actually align correctly to go in there. It was really bizarre. And then you get down to this little 15 right here. And what you can see is there's a spot on the side of his chest that it hooks into. Okay, easy, got it. It doesn't tell you, though, this is supposed to hook into the back ball thing that you're attached to. You cannot really see that on here at all. I had to literally look up other instructions like this to give me an idea, where does this go? And it wasn't even this picture, but I had to do things like this, like look up different instructions just to see where it went. And then realized, oh, it fits right there. And then that's actually how I realized, oh, the chest plates are supposed to be pushed back further because the instructions weren't very clear. Now, if everything lines up really well, great. Again, we have a serious problem here when we get to this step. So one of the interesting things that you can see over here on the far right, he actually has 4 arm slots for every single one of his, he has 4 arms. Well, you can see that this one over here on this side goes to the lower arm, and you can kind of guesstimate that maybe this arm goes to that top one up here, but over here on the other section, there is no indication of which arm that goes to. It's just, here's an arrow pointing to back there somewhere. You could kind of make a guesstimate that maybe it's supposed to go to the top one, but it's just not very clear. And also, lining it up, because there's a groove in there, but it's not a very well defined groove that fits and then locks in a place. It's hard to really tell, am I putting it in the right spot? And the answer that I've found so far is maybe. And so then you got to build these arms that are crazy convoluted and with really thin pieces. So you got to be really careful, because this little piece right here on 1718 broke off. That little extra piece that looks like it's not even supposed to be there, that broke off really, really easily because it's super fragile. And then come to find out, you put these things on the backs of his shoulders with those little surgery tools or whatever, manipulation tools. They actually, the one on his left shoulder when you're looking behind him connects into that energy thing. And it doesn't clearly tell you that from right there. You have to go down to here on the far right to see, oh, it's supposed to connect there. So I had to realize that. And then you've got a random tube that connects to a piece you put back here. That's not bad. It's just obnoxious how it fits. And then finally you get down to the bottom, okay? And first it's like, oh, this is going really smoothly. Everything's good. Put his arm in, da-da-da-da-da. And then you realize the problem. If you pay attention to the end of his staff, there's an energy piece that looks like it's coming off of something shooting out of the staff, kind of, but it looks fake. I almost cut it off because it didn't look like it was supposed to be there. And it actually, if you pay attention, it hooks into a piece of it, this whole thing over here on the guy. That was a pain in the butt. And the final product over here shows that it all looks like this. It does not. It doesn't fit like that. It legit does not. And anybody that tells me, oh, it fit perfectly, I mean, maybe. You could make a case that it could happen, but unfortunately I didn't get that case. So Illuminor Xeris, while a beautiful model, I was kind of afraid of this. He is a nightmare and a half to build because he's a Scorpec destroyer with so much extra to him, it's not even funny. He builds like an absolute nightmare, and he's meant for looks. But I mean, I could literally push down on that piece for half a second and break like 5 things on him. Because he's that fragile. Beautiful piece. When he's painted and done, he's going to look awesome on the shelf. I probably won't even use him right now, because unless they revise his points in the next update where he's, 40 or 50 points lower, then he becomes kind of more interesting. Maybe. But right now, meh. Yeah, do you agree? Is Illuminor Xeris the worst build in Necrons even, or beyond? Because I don't have all the builds for all the other stuff, and I haven't built everything off of the Necrons, but so far he is a nightmare and a half. I don't think anything else quite compares. Silent King compares in a way of difficulty just because there's so much to it, but yet you expect it to have some problems with being that big. It's going to be bigger, but at the same time, I had one size problem of like things just didn't fit where they needed to, so I had to adjust some stuff, and that was frustrating. But this, working with not only those size issues of like things not fitting where they needed to, but also the size of the model itself. Like Illuminor Xeris is much smaller than Silent King, and the pieces that you're building are so much smaller. I think he's definitely right up there. That's why the push fits are a beautiful new design. The Cryptothrall bucket heads are kind of on the edge of push fit because they're not entirely, but yet they are. And they're they push in, but they don't like stay fitted there. They're loose, but they're easy to build because you know exactly where it's supposed to go because it fits pretty well and easily. So they were awesome. They were actually a fun little build because they were so simple. As you look at them, you're like, oh gosh, there's gonna be a lot of layers now. 2 legs, a chest piece, the arm attachments, and a head, and then the base. That's it. Easy stuff. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below. What do you think? Is Illuminor Xeris one of the hardest models to build? If not, why not? Just at least in the Necrons, and then beyond it, what's harder than that outside of the Necrons? Let me know in the comments below. I've been Cody from the Keepers of Nerdom. Take care.